Infections have very dire consequences, and sometimes you go from being healthy with a total knee to getting an infection, and then 2 months later, you pass away. My wife that passed away, she died of complications of an infection from a surgery. And that was after I started the company. Personal kind of stuff has continued to fuel me to really focus on these patients.
But I also know it does fuel you about making this company right for patients. Today we are sitting down with Chris Hughes and Eric Stookey, two longtime orthopedics operators who built OsteoRemedies into one of the most dominant infection management companies in the industry. In this episode, they talk about realities of entrepreneurship in healthcare.
Honestly, I hadn't focused on infection at all because most of my career was in primary hips and knees. And so my first initial reaction was, how big is this market?
I remember I had a conversation with a guy and he was like, man, you're crazy. You're going to do spacers?
Someone says that to you, what is your initial instinct?
I was happy. I loved my anonymity. I loved it when everyone said that's a small market. I mean, stay out of it. I wanted everybody to think, forget about the infection market, because I wanted to own it.
Is that a hunch for you, or did you have data?
It was a hunch.
I don't believe the data has proven out.
And Mike Tyson said it best, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
This is Dr. Michael Meneghini. Welcome to the Unhinged podcast. As I routinely say, the healthcare landscape is shaking. The ground is trembling below us. There is so much change, so much controversy and chaos. And we are here on this podcast to talk about the real issues, the things that people are afraid to talk about or a little nervous or timid to talk about, maybe out in public, maybe at a large venue, at a large orthopedic meeting. But here, we're going to have the difficult conversations, and we're going to have great guests who are willing to share their thoughts about the healthcare future on Unhinged. And I'm honored today to have two of my very, very close friends with me, Chris Hughes, Eric Stookey, who we're going to talk about a lot of things in this podcast. We're going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about risk and entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about starting a business from nothing, growing it in a really niche space, which is infection, which some may have called you both crazy. And the good news is the two of them are also close. We're going to dive into that later. In fact, they're kind of like brothers a little bit. Sometimes they'll finish each other's sentences. That'll be weird, but hang with us. But it'll be a great time. We're going to dive into all things. The first thing I want to talk about is tonight we're drinking Italian red wine. That seems to make our design sessions better. We'll get into that a little bit later about our design sessions.
Plenty of vintages.
That's exactly right. So I'm Northern Italian. I happen to love Italian wine. That's a good theme tonight. Your parent company of OsteoRemedies, Dimitra, is in Italy as well.
That's right.
So I think the only wine we could drink tonight is Italian wine.
That's
it's much better than the $5 wine that I first learned to drink when I was in Connecticut 15 years ago that I bought at the gas station. So we've come a little way from that.
That's right.
So cheers. Gentlemen.
Hey,
thanks
cheers.
for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here to share your thoughts on all things orthopedics, infection, and entrepreneurship.
Cheers.
All right, let's get right into it. First thing, if you don't mind, for the audience, just introduce yourselves real quick. Give us your past. Chris, tell us the role at OsteoRemedies, how you started it a little bit, but give us your past, even from where you're born and raised up till now, so the audience gets to know you.
Well, Eric won't be surprised that the first sentence out of my mouth is I was born and raised in Ohio, diehard Ohio State Buckeye fan.
Here we go.
And went to college down in Florida. I've been in the South my whole adult life. Was fortunate to go through an ROTC scholarship in college, spent 4.5 years active duty in the Army. But my whole post-Army life has been orthopedics and spine. That's really all I know. But it's
So how
a
many
business.
years has that been?
So 32 years of orthopedics
After
and spine after
the
4.5 in the Army. So
Well, thank you for your
that's
service.
right. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, it was a pleasure to serve. So that's kind of what I kind of grew up in. I've had a really fortunate career in that I had the opportunity to work with a couple of big companies.
Yep.
And then I worked with a couple of small companies, and I've worked with some private companies and some public companies, and I've had a real pleasure the last, I guess it's 13 plus, it's about 17 years now working with 3 startups.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I mean, Medtronic to this is like that's what I wanted. We're going to dive into that.
Yeah,
big time.
so that's really all I know. Orthopedics and spine and Italian wine.
Thanks, Italian wine. Good. Thanks for being here, Chris. I appreciate it. Eric, give us your background. where you're from. We can talk a little bit about the Hoosiers. We're sitting here in my basement where some of the magic happens, as we say, in Indiana. But give us your story if you don't mind.
Yeah, it was 1993-ish was my real introduction to professional orthopedics. I grew up just outside of Warsaw, Indiana, so 15 minutes outside. I was a Wawasee Warrior who was the competing school.
You had no
against.
choice but to go in orthopedics if you're from Warsaw.
I know, and I didn't. So my parents were both school teachers, so I didn't have a direct connection. But literally, I was at Indiana University, which won the national championship. I don't know if Chris remembers that or not. They beat Ohio State on the way. News. But this year,
news.
and no, I was sitting.
This happened again. I mean, this is a recurring theme. Anyway.
I was sitting at Indiana, and there was a thing posted up when they used to put things on like billboards and stuff, and it was for an internship at DePuy. And I was like, I think I could go do this. I went and interviewed for it, got it, started making a little money going back. It was actually a co-op program where it was a great program. A lot of professionals that got into it went through that. But 6 months at school, 6 months at DePuy, did that for about a 2-year period back and forth, and then went to work for a couple of the guys that worked at DePuy at the time, and ended up following them to Wright Medical. Spent almost 20 years at Wright in various positions, marketing on up into sales, and ended up running the extremity bio division at the end. But learned a ton, and so many good people went through that went on to run companies and everything else. Unbelievable experience. And then that carried me all the way through 2014. And he and I, believe it or not, knew each other because he was at Wright Medical in 1996. I started in 95, and we were both junior product managers.
But that's when you first met with Wright.
That's when we met and worked together at Wright.
We met 30 years ago.
So there are two spectacular pictures that the audience need. Two.
Yeah.
One, you guys look dressed up.
Yeah.
And ready to go. You had a button that got you in trouble on it. The other one, that's fine. We won't talk about that. The other one, you guys are in more casual clothes with your respective. It looks like I know you were in an IU thing, but tell us about when you guys met, because I've known you guys for over a decade, and the two of you are kind of like brothers. I mean, you'll finish each other's sentences, you will barb each other, and it's a great interaction. But it's rare, I think, and I want you to comment on that, that you see people that are such good friends that work together in business.
Yeah.
In business. Yeah. That long. I've seen it tear some relationships apart. You managed to work. Walk us through your guys' relationship together from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at it. They say you should never go into business with your brother or
if this gets really uncomfortable and you feel like hugging him, it's totally legal. You can do whatever you
Come
need
here,
to.
come on over here.
We hug it out once in a while. I mean, you have to, especially when
I'm
you
feeling
travel.
warm and fuzzy
especially
right now.
when you travel. A lot of people have a work wife. I have a work
pillows,
wife.
Chris.
It's just
those are not
Eric.
pillows,
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but it's interesting. They always say you should never go into business with your brother or your best friend, and it's probably good advice for the most part. But really, if you check things at the door and you respect each other for their strengths and their weaknesses, my whole life, I've overachieved because of other people. I've always covered up my weaknesses with great people.
It's a good leadership. That's a good leadership tip.
So, I read that somewhere. I didn't come up with that. Yeah. But when I had the pleasure of founding and starting OsteoRemedies, I got things kind of off the ground, had an idea of where I wanted to go, but was really fortunate that Eric became available looking for his next opportunity, and I asked him to just help me think through things. And we did that for 2-3 months.
Yeah.
And then
finally, this is when you were considering starting OsteoRemedies.
No, I'd already started it.
You'd already started it. Okay.
I'd probably have been about a year and a half in. Got the thing going. Hired a bunch of distributors. Started selling, and then when Eric was president of Wright Medical, and he was deciding, okay, it's time for another opportunity. He started looking. He had great opportunities, so I kind of stole him for a little bit. I as my friend and as a colleague and as someone I really trusted in the orthopedic total joint space, because I was in the spine space for 15 years before I started OsteoRemedies. And so Eric helped me think through a lot of things. And really, in the 3 or 4 months where he was really kind of consulting as a friend, I just kind of asked him one day, I said, why don't we just do this? Let's just do it. Let's check our friendship at the door, check our titles at the door, and let's be partners and let's do this. And 13 years later, in our case, 11 years later.
So I think that's an important point. You said, let's check certain things at the door.
Yeah.
What did you check? I mean, what did you say leave there? Because it's probably not going to be a friendship. You're still friends. I mean, right?
Yeah, for
What
sure.
did you? What was that point?
The point was, okay, I'm the founder, I'm the president, I'm the CEO, and that's on my business card.
Got it.
Eric's coming in as our COO. He's going to do all the hard work, and he's done it all for the last decade. He's going to make
I
all
can vouch for that.
He's going to make all the good decisions, and he's done that. For
I mean,
the
Hughes
last
comes in with the
decade.
wine. He'll come in
You know.
making with
Right.
the food. He's like, but that's what CEOs do.
That's
The
right.
point of
Anyway.
it is, I think in order for our friendship to work in a business setting,
Yeah.
is we don't have that hierarchy. You know,
Right.
we're partners in this. And we decided this together. You know, early on, we kind of looked at the org chart that we had, which was like 3 people, and we said, well, someday we'll have 50 people,
Yeah.
and let's divide it. You know, okay, I'll be in charge of these 5 things, and you're in charge of these 5 things. If we ever have a tie,
And you had this conversation directly with one
Yeah,
another.
yeah,
we
for sure.
absolutely
But-
did.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
will say one thing to add to that too is I think it would have been different if we both had taken the same paths for the 20 years before that. It was
Okay.
different, but we were together as young product managers at Wright, like I mentioned,
For just a couple years.
For a couple years, and then it was over. Then he went and did a completely different path. I stayed at Wright for 19 years
Before you formed OsteoRemedies.
Before we formed. So
Okay, so there was a little bit of
exactly, and so like we didn't come in. Even though we'd remain friends, we didn't come in like-minded and say, this is going to be a groupthink thing. Like we've had plenty of experiences where we've like called each other out and said, I think it should go this way. No, it should go that way. And we come up with what we think is the best decision out of it. But it's not just a bunch
That's the
of...
best way to come to a consensus is
Right.
to hammer it out. And that's what I mean by checking it at the door is don't worry about titles. Don't worry about who's in charge. Don't worry about all those things they teach you to do in business school or in the military.
Right.
But let's truly go through this as partners and build this thing with the patient in mind first. And that's why I started OsteoRemedies is, it was an unmet need that I thought patients were suffering in a miserable way. And so I'm proud of what we've done.
Yeah.
So is that the way he describes it? Similar perspective?
For sure. Yeah.
And when you guys had to go, were there times, I'm sure, when you had to go at each other a little bit? You can't run a successful growth business. I'm about ready to ask you what's the worst thing you've called each other? Because brothers can get after it. I've got 3 boys, and sometimes I have to separate the 2 of them. So have you had to go at it for a little bit every once in a while?
We're both like at this point, maybe more. We were both more fired up in our younger years.
No
But
doubt.
That
I
is
will
true.
say
That is true.
we've
doubt.
calmed a little bit. But there's been times when we can tell when each other when we've reached the limit, and we're like,
That's fair enough.
if I go another step beyond this, is going to get a little awkward. But I'll be honest, that's rarely happened.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we agree on everything, but we're usually able to talk it out. And the other good thing is, keep in mind, we're talking about 10, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Now we've got an unbelievable group of people that
Yeah.
we work with, and
That's right.
we've relinquished so many things to the team that
that's great.
they're the ones that are making a lot of the big decisions.
It's
now.
been fun to watch. It's been fun to be a part of. I think it's important for people who hear this to understand, because you're right. People will tell you, don't do this.
Don't do it.
But you all have
they
done
say
it
it. Don't do it.
successfully, right?
I think you should do it if it makes sense.
I think people want to feel purpose and value in their job. And one of the things that we know, even when I was at IU, you would always see in the reviews when they were asking people, how are you doing in your work? They would always love the team they work with, and then they thought the executives were, horrible. It didn't matter when they took that over my 10 years, always the same. People want the people they work with to value each other.
Yeah.
And you guys have done it in a way it's been admirable, because a lot of other companies, there's a lot of churn, there's an executive moves on, but you guys have been together for a long period of time. And I think it's important for people to understand it's possible. But you got to work at it too. I'm sure there were times where you did have to check your ego at the door, right?
Yeah, I think you asked about bad names. Most of the bad names we've called each other were on the golf course or during an Ohio State, Indiana football or
That's true.
basketball
Well, that's
game.
fair.
Yeah,
And that's probably fair game.
on the
right?
business side, I think we're both able to compartmentalize well. I think both of us are aggressive. We're both competitive. But when we need to get things done that are important for the business, the good thing is, we're talking about people, we've made every hiring decision together. And it's not like he's hiring people and I'm hiring people. We've purposefully interviewed everybody we've hired, the 2 of us plus other managers, because the most important thing to us from the beginning was culture. It wasn't always, and this doesn't mean we haven't hired the best people, because we have, but it wasn't always, let's hire the best of these 5 people. Let's hire the person that's going to be the best fit for us in this role. And that's served us well in the last 13 years.
I mean, we've had a really good track record of long-term employees, and the couple that haven't been that way have been because they didn't fit into the culture, and we probably missed a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
we
been a
have
small
we
number.
have the same thing. I mean, when you're a growth and you're trying to get employees, you're going to hire and fire a little bit, but if you can retain the majority, it's a sign of a healthy company. Give us perspective. You started the company what year?
So officially started in July of 2013.
2013. So
is
we're 13
when I
years in.
founded the business.
It was just you, 13. And take it today, how many people are in the company?
So we've got 34 people in our W-2 world today. Yep. We've got 21 in our Memphis office, and then the rest of them are scattered out in the field. We've got a handful of remote employees that do corporate work, and then we've been blessed in the last 2.5 years to pick up. We've gone from 0 to 9 regional sales directors that I believe have now set us for the next phase of our build. To really hone in on
growth.
Really hone in on being able to take our good distributors that have helped build the business and help them succeed.
Great. So when you were advising him, I assume that was for free. Is that right? You were helping him out?
At the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the beginning. So
I didn't have any money.
It was fair.
It was friendship.
And you probably couldn't even afford nice wine back then, I'm sure. All right, so what convinced you when he made the pitch? What convinced you to join him?
I'm looking forward to this answer because I've never asked him.
I asked, and then I'm going to have a sip of wine while Eric's doing
It's interesting because I had just come off, what I described a little bit of, what I didn't get into is at right over the last 3 or 4 years, lots of acquisitions, lots of change, lots of leadership stuff and everything else. And so it was starting to become, bigger and bigger. And with that comes sometimes bureaucracy. It's not a bad thing. It's just like, it's a fact of transition of business, right? And so in part, the part that excited me the most was, I went and we talked about what was he doing. He's like, well, I'm doing everything. Earlier today I shipped out some product, and I looked at I looked at a booth, and I'm probably gonna have to go set that up next week at a meeting. And I was like, honestly, that along with an opportunity to work with somebody that I knew, for better or worse, we knew all the good and the bad, right? I knew exactly what we were going to get into, and I felt really good about it. So there was a friendship and a trust thing there, of course. But beyond that, like taking a step back and going really small was super exciting to me. And doing it from the ground up. He was 1.5 years in or whatever it was, really less than a year of fully launching.
Correct.
And it was a chance to go do all the stuff that I've loved through this experience. Like, I know we'll probably get into some of it, but just, developing good surgeon teams and the things that I really wanted to go do without all of the, there wasn't all the rules and regulations at the beginning because we could go set the rules. And that's the part that was most compelling for me, was to get back and do those things that I love doing.
Yeah, and we're going to dive in a little bit. And I hope you understand the authenticity that we're in my basement. And while you're talking on a serious moment, my 4 kids apparently seem to be running in through the kitchen, which is directly above us. So my apologies if the sound crew.
Which is what I love about coming here, by the way.
Well, we've been in here for, we're going to talk about it. Many
Podcasts are supposed to be real life. There's
that's
nothing
real
wrong with
life,
that.
all right. Because I just heard it. I literally, if I could have pulled my phone out and said, "Stop running," you're like across the top of our podcast. Right. Anyway, yes, I have 6 children, and I love them dearly. 4 of them are young and upstairs running around. My wife's at a funeral visitation right now, so it's a little bit chaotic. Well, that's life, right? Now here we are at the podcast. All right, so let's talk. We talked a lot about, that journey between the two of you. Now I want to talk to you about the leap. So one of the things I like to, in this part of my career, and you all know I recently did that as well, one of the things I like to ask people about is that entrepreneurship leap. It's not for everybody. Some people think it is. Some people are like, no, I can do it. I want to do it. But man, when you get out there and you first do it, sometimes it's really lonely. Sometimes it is also like, what the hell did I just do? Chris, talk us through the leap to do that? And then did you have some moments early on where you're like, shit, I think I may have gotten out over my skis a little bit? And it's okay. We have a drink of wine if you need to, just air it out.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to.
You should have the wine.
I had some of those moments early on. I had the same moment 2 days ago. Those moments never go away.
That's probably true.
The interesting
2
thing,
days ago, geez.
The interesting thing is with OsteoRemedies, when I founded it, what I'm proud of is I was literally able to draw it out on a napkin and take it to the.
You
to
came
the
up with the name, you did everything, you said, here it is, and you could
For better or
start it.
worse, did it all, right? Early on.
I like the name.
I got lucky. It was available, and I hired a trademark attorney, and he said, you can have that name. I said, I want it. And then he told me how much it was to pay for that, and I was like, I don't have any money yet. We're going to start selling soon. But prior to OsteoRemedies, I had the fortune, I left a big company. We talked about that.
Yeah.
I was at Medtronic for 10 years, and I never thought about money. I never thought about cash. I never thought about expenses.
Had to steady.
We had a lot of it. And then I went to a startup company that had already begun, but they hired me as president. So I had a chance to build a company.
That was a good.
But I didn't start it.
Good transition.
Yeah, so I learned a lot. Made a lot of mistakes.
And how long you were there?
Wrote 4 years.
4 years. Oh, yeah.
4 years. Started a spine company with an amazing group of people in New York City, and then exited out of that. Started a distribution company for a couple years to sit out a non-compete, and that's when I reacquainted myself with my Italian friends, and we dreamt up OsteoRemedies. So
Italians can be very innovative.
So this is
as
my
you know.
third startup. First one I started from the napkin, but a lot of the lessons learned were from the first two. But yes, I had a lot of those aha moments.
Do you remember one in particular that was memorable for you? When they're like, oh, what? I might have gotten too far early on.
With OsteoRemedies?
Yeah, was there a time?
Absolutely. It was shortly after Eric joined us.
I think I know what he's going to say.
And
but
we were shipping
You're
out
like,
all
why did
our
I hire Eric?
sets.
That could have been
Yeah.
one.
We were shipping out all our sets and implants, and we're doing a lot of cases, and we're growing because there's not a lot of competition at the time.
That's true.
And then Eric and I started going through our instrument trials. And he pulls out my instrument sets, and they're these stainless steel knee, hip, and shoulder trials. I don't know if we ever showed them to you.
It's a boat anchor. You literally could put an anchor to that boat right out there. No
I'll
problem.
show them to you
Stop it.
one day. But I had one of those aha moments where it was like, man, yeah, I guess I made some decisions early on that maybe weren't perfect. But then we changed to Radel, and the rest is history.
And off you went.
That's one, but there's plenty.
I
of them.
thought what you were going to say
Tell
is
me.
we showed up at the, I can't remember if it was Current Concepts or what it was, and
Oh,
somebody,
yeah.
we had shipped this booth in, and it was
Yeah.
like the first moment, I said earlier I was excited about going and doing
Yeah.
that stuff, and it was,
Yeah.
but I wasn't excited at the moment when
Is
this
this
booth
the white
showed up.
peaked one?
Yes.
That was the MSIS.
MSIS, that's right, that's what
That's
it was.
right.
And it had 1,000 parts to it. It took us hours to
And it was
set
you
it up.
two
It was
putting it
the
up?
two of us putting
Two
it up
of
because that's
us.
all, we were
Did you get a picture of that?
probably somewhere out
Probably.
there.
We were sweating to
I
death.
could-
Like he
setting
had to
the
take
thing
his
up.
shirt off and go change because he was sweating
Yeah.
so
That's
much,
just-
and I was
don't
like,
want to hear talk about that.
We
but
were
anyway,
walking
that's-
around to other booths. We were borrowing scissors. We were borrowing tape. Then we started.
What year was this?
this would have been
Probably 16, maybe
yeah.
15, 16.
It might have been late 15.
I started working
No,
with you guys.
It was
In
15.
full disclosure,
It had to be
for the
15.
audience. I am a consultant with OsteoRemedies.
Yes.
We'll
Yeah.
get into that for full
Yeah.
disclosure. But I started working with you guys in 16, right? The beginning of
Yes.
16.
We
Yeah.
met.
So it was before that.
It was before that. It was probably right, Chris is right. It was right
I think it
before
was
that.
15 because we launched. The company started July of 13. I launched product in March of 14. Eric joined us in February of 15.
That
And
was
this meeting
August.
in
It's
the
always in
fall.
August. It was.
So it was the fall of.
Yeah, but see, that is the stuff
Yeah.
that people need to hear, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you see the big company now, you see it successful, you see your booths, you're not putting them up anymore. But I think I deal with that even with young surgeons sometimes. You're like, well, I see your practice. I want that. Well, you don't see the things that happened early on when I'm going to every chicken dinner, I'm answering every phone call. They don't see that. And
That's
I
right.
think entrepreneurship has a level of risk and sweat equity early on.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
today you can reminisce and have good wine about all the 1,000 pieces it was in. But at the time, you're like, what the
Yeah.
is going
Right.
on?
Yeah.
If he had to go change shirts, he's sweating.
He
I mean,
was.
We might have used some choice words at each other that day.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that 15-minute booth assembly took us about 3.5 hours, and we never finished it. We ended up just giving up. And
It was close.
because it was pretty much
the good thing is
done.
you had no competition in the infection space anyway.
If
so
the
no
air
one-
conditioning would have been blowing hard, the thing would have fallen over.
right.
I'm telling you. We got through that, and then that was the first and last time we used that booth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The good news is
I won't tell you what we called that booth, but we had a name for it.
Was it foul?
It was inappropriate. That's all I'll say.
They can probably delete it out. Look, the good news is you're not putting up your own booth now, and I can only imagine how people were making fun of you and watching you two try and put that thing together.
Well, that was the interesting thing is a lot of people in our industry knew Eric as president of Wright Medical. They knew me as someone that started a couple companies and did well at Medtronic.
You went up to president?
It was full. That's what I was going to say. Full disclosure, it was of a division. I was over the bioextremity division, so
Okay.
I know, but I don't want to elevate it more than it is. But it was a great gig. I was very
he was
fortunate.
president.
I like your humor.
And then all of a sudden he was with me sweating, putting up so a lot of people we'd run into all our friends at Zimmer and Biomet and Stryker, and they'd be like, what are you two idiots doing?
I will say though, like we to a point on the culture that we were talking about before, we still like when we go to the academies and the ACASs and whatever else, like yes, now we've grown to the part where really good people have other, we hire a lot of that stuff out and all, but we still love setting things up.
He and I are still the first ones at the booth. And
we're trying to still be involved at that level
yeah,
too.
but that's another good leadership point, right? I talk about that all the time. The leaders set the tone for the rest of the company.
Yeah.
If the I always pride myself in being one of the last cars in the parking lot, or not the last part, depend. We've got a good culture now where I'm certainly not the first one there because I'm not an early riser, but I'm I'm usually the last, but not always, which I love. But your point is correct. You're not willing to roll your sleeves up and get down in it. Now there's a fine line between micromanaging,
No doubt.
right? And how have you managed to do that now? You both stay really involved, but yet I assume, because you've got good employee retention, you don't micromanage. How have you managed to do that?
I'm still figuring it out. I figure it out every day. I was thinking about it. In fact, we talked about that a little bit on the way up because I had some calls and.
But it's hard when you've built it together.
Yeah.
You're putting up the stuff, and now all of a sudden you got to let go and let people. But you got to groom the next leaders, right? You have to let people assume it, right? So it's hard.
No doubt.
You've met a lot of the people that have gone through, and we've had some unbelievable people in OsteoRemedies, but we've hired people at a increasing level over the years, and they've grown a lot. Think about like people like you met Rachel when she first started, who runs R&D,
absolutely,
and been in
coming out as a young engineer and growing to be.
Look what she's done through the organization. So it's like it's not something I have to think about now to give her the autonomy she needs because she's like better at it than I ever would be.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So some of it's happened naturally without.
So do you ever have a moment when you were like, oh shit, I made the wrong decision. We're in a place that's not going to be good, or have you always had the confidence? Like, yeah, this is.
You mean about the business overall?
When you made the leap to jump into.
No, I joked about some of that stuff early on, but
felt.
Yeah, I felt it. It's been home from the day that I got here. I knew it was the right thing.
I had an oh shit moment. I'm gonna let you know right now.
You did?
You know when it was?
No.
When I got my rear end up at the hotel in Washington D.C. to go advocate for you guys for the FDA.
Well, that's a good one.
And we were coached, and the FDA is completely nonsensical, right? And you go in there, and no one really warned me that the FDA has no rational thought process whatsoever. And we're like, what? Like, how hard could it be to say that hips and knees and antibiotics are exactly the same? And they're like, no. And the fact that we showed up, they were like, oh, you guys are here? And they put 100 people randomly with chairs in a room.
Crazy.
It was, unfortunately, it tells a lot about our government, but I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We got prepped.
We were prepared.
I remember that. Like, it was showtime.
Yeah.
We had the consultant preparing us, and then you go to present to a bunch of people who look like they could give a shit. I was like, what on God's green earth?
That was the hardest part to
see. It was
see,
disappointing about our country, in all fairness, about the FDA, really, that they can't even get their act together. But I guess we were so low on the totem pole. We're in Indiana. Eli Lilly could probably call a meeting tomorrow and they'll be there. But oh my gosh, that was obscene. At that point, I was like, what have I gotten myself into? Now, fortunately, you haven't invited me back to the FDA since then, and I appreciate that.
Well, we've been lucky to have mostly straightforward 510K stuff, other than
that one dog
a few battles that we had, but we learned a lot from those. You brought up something interesting. One of the words that I used a lot early in my career and that I don't like anymore is micromanaging. And I try to be a micro leader. I try to use that term, even micro leadership instead of micromanagement. To me, it means removing obstacles for your people so they can get their job done best. So I view myself as a leader of my team, and my goal, my number one priority is to remove their obstacles. When they have a problem with FDA, or they have a problem with a distributor, they have a problem with our partners in overseas, I try to remove those obstacles so they can get their job done. I don't tell them what to do. I don't like to micromanage. I like to micro lead.
I love that perspective. What is the hardest thing that you have to remove for your team?
Distractions.
Inside the business, or
inside the business, I'm
keeping people laser focused?
Yeah, and it's the distractions that they don't bring up themselves. It's the distractions
you see them coming in,
that they get just from the fact that, we're a victim of our success in a way, right? We're no longer a small startup. We're a pretty decent sized company trying to get bigger. We now have really good global partners that make our organization even bigger. And so consequently, there's just a lot more communication going on amongst all the companies. And sometimes that can be distracting to our people from what they need to do for OsteoRemedies. So I try my best to get in there and remove those things and help them from that standpoint. But
let's talk about, we'll get into it. Let's talk about the space that you're in. So you didn't form a company and say, we're going to go into orthopedics. You didn't form a company, we're going to spine, which was your wheelhouse. You came into the infection space, which is a unique space we can spend some time on.
Yeah.
Eric, when you heard OsteoRemedies was going infection, did something attract you to the infection space? I'm going to ask Chris in a minute about what it is.
A little bit. I will say two things hit me at the first, when we first started talking about. One was, is it big enough? You think about.
Well, that's how much infection is there, right?
Exactly. And honestly, I hadn't spent that much time in it, just because most of my career was in primary hips and knees, revision hips and knees, and then foot and ankle and bioextremity.
Yep.
And so we really hadn't focused. I can tell you right, we didn't focus on infection at all. And so my first initial reaction was, and I remember even we talked about that early on, I was like, how big is this market? And Chris was like, well, I went to the MSIS meeting, and I think it's a lot bigger than people give it credit for. And so we started talking.
Was that a hunch for you, or did you have data?
It was a hunch. So
Does that make you feel better knowing you did the whole thing on a hunch?
Well, it came from him, so it didn't make me feel that much better. But I mean, it was
fair.
I'm glad this is coming out right now. You can go home and tell your wife, you're not going to believe what the hell I just learned.
Right.
You did the whole thing on a hunch.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But, well, you go, and then I'm going to say one thing about the other part.
No, but it's true. Before I officially said, okay, I want to do this, I went to the MSIS in Philadelphia, the consensus meeting in 2013. And I just registered as an independent person. I didn't even have the name OsteoRemedies.
What made you do that? Just because you're like, I'm interested in it?
Because I was talking with my partners in Techris, and they were interested in me doing this. I thought, I need to really do some diligence on what this market's about.
You had the relationship with Techris through before.
I met them, believe it or not, in 1996, same time, because I was the product manager at Wright Medical that got stuck with bone cement. Nobody wants that as a product manager.
I got it.
And so I established a relationship with Techris in
Got it.
1996, so 30 years, even though
I
I started this company only 13 years ago. But the point of that was, it was kind of a hunch, is that, I heard about this meeting, and I thought, well, I'm going to go there because everybody who knows anything about infections is going to be there.
Yeah.
And I listened to all the talks. I specifically went and talked to a bunch of surgeons I knew, a bunch of PhDs I knew, and I started asking them questions. And they kept looking at me like, what are you doing here? Aren't you still with, Paradigm Spine, or aren't you still with Medtronic?
Yeah, probably.
And I was like, well, I'm thinking about doing something specific to infection only. And I remember I had a conversation with a guy named Tiger Buford, who writes a really great blog called orthostreams.com.
Yeah, I get it every day.
Yeah, and he writes a lot.
He's been doing that for a long time. I never met him.
And I talked to him about it, and he was like, man, you're crazy. You're going to do spacers? And then about 2 years later, after I
when someone says that to you, what is your initial instinct?
I was happy. I love my anonymity.
Yeah.
I wanted Stryker
good if no one
and
else is doing it,
Zimmer
I'm in.
and DePuy and Enovis. I wanted everybody to forget about the infection market, because I wanted to own it.
Yeah.
And I looked at, and that's
Something
the
about
reason.
that.
That's the reason I started the company. Is I looked at it as an unmet need in a problem that was getting worse. And the real problem with the infection market, it's unlike a dislocation or osteolysis or something like that. Infections, sometimes you go from being healthy with a total knee to getting an infection, and then 2 months later you pass away.
Right.
That's a bad outcome. Infections have very dire consequences, and not just for the patient. It's for the family, It's for the business that patient works for.
Yep.
I mean, there's an ecosystem of people that are affected when someone gets a PJI. And I wanted to really focus on that and be 24/7 infection because no one else was. Everyone was dabbling in infection,
Yeah.
but no one was 24/7 on it. So I just kind of loved my anonymity. I loved it when everyone said that's a small market. I mean, stay out of it. And it allowed us to kind of build it up well before everyone else jumped in.
You feel the same?
Yeah, in fact, so that was what the first part was it big enough that like we were talking about before. The second part was what hit me when Chris started talking through this and we started talking through this was there was a parallel with what I had just been through at Wright. You know the history, a little bit of that, right? Dow Corning Wright was breast implants and all that stuff. Then the problems, then Leo Whiteside comes in, Vanum Knee and all that, and it becomes a knee company, cementless knee company, well ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Ultimately became, the medial pivot, which was one of my early projects.
Two things, by the way.
Yes.
Very innovative that
No
have come
doubt.
back around to be mainstays
Yeah.
and will be there. But back then, niche.
Correct. And so, but the challenge for Wright was in the hip and knee world, tiny piece of it. Even with all that, they were such a small piece of it. All of a sudden, some really smart people discover foot and ankle. And for a long time, it's like that market's too small. It's undeveloped. There's nothing there.
Look at it now.
Don't waste your time. Look at it now. It's what ultimately unlocked the value for Wright and why
True.
they got acquired by a really nice multiple by Stryker, right? That's why
True.
it happened.
Yeah. Good
If they
point.
would have remained, just sort of a hip and knee company, I don't think they ever would have gotten there.
That's a
And
great
so
point.
there was a ton of parallels with that Chris had already identified it, right? But for me, like you talk about building the confidence and all,
Yeah.
I was thinking about, oh my gosh, this can be another foot and ankle type scenario. We can go shine a big old light on this at the right time. Stay with the anonymity while you can, but eventually put a big light on this saying, and when we wake up, this is what we think about every single day.
Yeah.
We're going to innovate in a way that others that are doing it part-time just can't and won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what really connected with me.
All right, let's get into the next topic, which I really want to dive into. This is something special. We're in my basement, and we've had a unique history together where we do a lot of design meetings, and especially in the early days, Eric, you and I were in my old house in the basement. There's a picture that is one of my favorites, which is Mario, who was the 8-year-old I just went upstairs and yelled at, and swaddled.
I love that picture.
Tim Broker took that picture, but
Yeah.
I saw that picture this weekend. Great picture.
Yeah, I was typing on my laptop. I had a cell phone right there. Cheese that Broker would always bring, a glass of wine, and Mario swaddled, who I can swaddle like nobody's business. I remember when, I think it was just so funny because Mark Zuckerberg for a period of time was like saying he could change a diaper than everybody. I would say right now, I would race Mark Zuckerberg in 2 seconds. I would destroy him. And I mean, I have 6 kids. Zuckerberg's probably got 8 nannies taking care of his babies.
Oh, boy.
I can change and swaddle a baby.
You're also a surgeon. You're used to
That's fair enough.
You're used to surgical. There's a surgical technique.
Hey,
to
I
do a
cannot
diaper.
change a diaper yet that I'm aware of. Okay, so let's get into those basement sessions. It was special for me because I appreciated the fact that as a busy surgeon with a family, you would come and we'd get in the basement and then we'd just start mapping stuff out. We'd have a nice glass of wine, but that really frees things to not be in a rigid environment. That was unconventional. You spent time at Wright Medical. Those basement sessions, I think they were special. Do you agree?
They were amazing. And I can remember the first time, like when we started talking and then Tim said, hey, we're going to go to Dr. Minigini's, basement and stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like we do design meetings at hotels and at, company events and whatever. And it was so unorthodox, but, it was unbelievable because for the reasons you said. One, you were able to do the things that I've really admired about you over the years, which is you were able to balance the family side with the unbelievable schedule
helped me
that you
because
have.
I didn't have to travel.
Exactly.
I could go up and sleep in my own bed and be with my kids later, and I could be with the kids before it, like I did tonight.
Right, exactly. So
kids,
just as a human standpoint, I always respected
and I
that
appreciated
like
that you guys were willing to do that.
For sure. But I would say in addition to that, just like the amount of conversation that we had and the efficiency that we worked through it. But we have countless books of all of the drawings that you made, and you grab the book from me and you start drawing out a hip stem or a knee stem, and probably one of the most rewarding things is going back and looking at that now and seeing those drawings that started back in 16, and all of a sudden then we see the products that we eventually launched and the patients that they benefit from that. And I know you've lived that in previous lives and with bigger companies and all that kind of stuff.
But at least you brought the proper the book you had nice. It was the proper squares. It wasn't like you brought a Mead like fourth grade book to the meeting, so that's good.
Yeah.
You did bring the right stuff, which is good. And you're right. The books, I love looking back at it because literally we were just sketching stuff out in the basement.
Yeah, and those things turned into not just products, but they turned into patentable ideas and things that we've been able to protect and offer up. So yeah, it's unbelievable going back and looking at that stuff. But it's a testament to, you think about what do you want to work with a surgeon, and that's one of the things I did learn from my earlier part of my career. I always wanted somebody that I shouldn't say but we always talked about we wanted surgeons that for one could think beyond their own OR. Think beyond their own practice. Like, can they see what the market needs beyond what works for them? And so finding somebody like you and some of the other great surgeons we worked with was really representative of that. The other thing is finding somebody that, could disrupt, that could, not just develop and design and think about status quo, but how do you go do something, that could disrupt the market, and not in a way that people don't want to buy it either, right? People can come up with some really crazy ideas that nobody's ever going to use, but coming up with ideas of things that meet a real need and that we can convince others and are willing to stand up at the podium and ask the tough questions and make the big statements and things like that.
Well, part of it for me, in all fairness, in the infection space, is because I treated so much infection, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a company that I can actually innovate with an infection. That was great. I didn't know at the time, and so part of it, yes, I'm not afraid to disrupt, as you know, and I'm willing to get up at the podium and say things not a lot of people will. That's fine. That's one thing. I was also ignorant because I didn't realize a huge chunk of my colleagues were in some fund around infection.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand why some of the attacks were almost personal. Well, I didn't know. No one told me that some of my colleagues to my left and my right were all in a fund competing against us. I didn't know that. I was blind to it, right? They didn't ever. It was never really disclosed. I'd be up there. I'm a consultant for OsteoRemedies, and boom, get hit in the head. Right? I was like, Jesus Christ, what is happening? Right? Well, I didn't know, but now I know. So now I know when I get up there and I'm going to talk about some infection, I bring my Kevlar vest and I get up there and we get after it. But it's a different sign.
No
but
doubt.
But that's where real innovation happens, right?
Yeah.
That you sit down with people you like. Yeah. I think, for me, you open up a glass of red wine, you sit there and you start talking, let free flowing happen, you get a pen, you start sketching stuff out, and I think it's been great. I appreciate that. That's been a very rewarding experience for even me personally and professionally to be able to do that. For sure. To do that with you.
And I will thank you. And it's obviously the same for me, but I will say that the third component is the other thing you just said, which is, when you're going to find somebody that you're going to work with in these situations where we're spending a lot of time at meetings and in basement sessions and whatever, find somebody that you want to spend time with, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
We used to talk about go find a surgeon consultant that you'd go have a beer with or enjoy a dinner with or whatever. And I think that's critical because you do spend so much time together. And if you don't have some of that, what's the point?
If you're going to be away from your family,
right?
You want it, and I think you sort of self-select anyway, right? People gravitate towards that, I think.
Yeah.
But those early basement sessions were awesome, right? The writing stuff down. Now, I think in full disclosure, our basement sessions have evolved, right? So now we do the same old design. You bring your book. I love your book with all the design sketches there. It's a different book. But Chris, we talk a lot about. Now we're doing more. We talk about some strategy things.
Yeah.
So, right? So you bring an update with how the business is doing. We talk strategy. You're a different company now than you were back then. Tell us about the next evolution of I would say the basement sessions and things that are important to the company.
Well, I think the basement sessions have gone at the right cadence, right? When we first started, it was all about R&D because we didn't have a business to talk about. We were designing products so that we could enter a business.
Your payments reflected that, by the way.
We could dominate a business. And, when we got, Eric hates it when I say it, but I love to say it, but when we got to 81% market share in spacers, we were like, okay, now what do we do? So that's when we decided we can't just be a spacer company.
Yeah.
We have to be an infection
management. And what year was that, do you think?
management.
When do you think that would happen?
There were two phases of that. In 2013, we were a spacer company. In 2016, we started to really think about infection management because we said, let's get beads in there. Surgeons want more opportunity to get more products into these cases, right? Yeah. And then we evolved with instrumentation for debridement, and then, of course, we've made a couple acquisitions, and our recent acquisition of Next Science getting into the whole biowash and experience thing. Yep. We can't be a spacer company and sit around and I also
Well, that is right. There is a fixed there. That is probably a fixed pie.
I mean, there's
orthopedics
46
growing.
to 50,000 patients a year that get infection.
Yeah.
But there's millions of patients that need infection prevention,
Right.
infection management products. So that's why I used to laugh at the other people who would, rightfully so.
It's okay. It's a friendly podcast. You can air it out. I know what you're doing.
He's really thinking on
I
this
know.
one.
Just
Wow.
air it out, Hughes.
Yeah.
Just air it out. It's okay. They'll cut it if they need. If you don't like it.
They always say when you're on camera, make sure you know that your mom might see this. And I got to be careful.
I was so far. I've been
what I
proud of
say.
anything I'd say about from
Yeah.
my mom would be like, "Yep."
But no, I mean, all the people that kind of made fun of me when I started an infection company, I laugh at now. And I don't do it in a
No, I know. You're not that kind of person.
braggadocious way. I mean, I just do it
Inside, you're like, okay, I justified that they were making fun of me, but I know I was on the right track.
because I would be lying if I told you who we are today was on my napkin when I had a vision of the company.
Yeah, but isn't that awesome? That's great.
My vision was to get spacers out there, find a few distributors, find some surgeons to help me generate the next evolution of products, and gee, I hope it's successful. We had some success, and now it's at the point where I really want the rest of the team to take it to that next level. And that's why working with a friend and a business partner is so important to me, is that we've got a team now of people that are constantly thinking of what's next. You know, we're not a spacer company anymore. We sell spacers, but we're an infection management company, and that need is not met yet.
Yeah.
No.
And you know my personal experience with my wife that passed away. She died of complications of an infection from a surgery, and that was after I started the company. And talk about ironic.
No, that's personal, and I think that's
and that personal kind of stuff has continued to fuel me to really focus on these patients. That, I mean, some of these outcomes they're life altering.
You know, no doubt about that. And you know how sorry I am about what happened to your wife. But I also know it does fuel you about
It fuels me.
About making this company right for patients, not just about the bottom line. You're not you're not publicly traded. You can focus on patient experience. You do have a parent, who you work with. But the good news,
Thankfully,
it sounds
it's allowed
like
us to really grow.
Yeah, we've
That's
been
what I'm
able to
saying.
do
It sounds
things we
like you
wouldn't have
have a-
done otherwise.
right,
For
and
sure.
finding that partnership, as we know in the healthcare space, in the orthopedic space in particular, over the last few years, private equity has come in, and finding that partner that can help you grow is critical. And you guys have found a really good partner in Dimitra, which is great.
Not every private equity firm is great to work with. I think we're fortunate. The founder of the business that I started, the Faccioli family in Italy, they had a great vision, right? They wanted to build a company that thought about patients. That's what attracted me to work with them. When they brought in Astorg, it really changed our potential trajectory. It gave us the ability, because of the funding, it gave us unlimited resources to help us look at our business metrics and our KPIs, and consequently, we've made 2 very significant acquisitions in the last 4 years because of that. We wouldn't have made that without them. So there's pros and cons of getting more seats at the table.
Yeah.
And not everybody wants a lot of direction. Not everybody wants a lot of help, but help is needed sometimes. And certainly from the financial standpoint, and the ability to run the business the way that we thought was best has been a great partnership.
Yeah, that's great. When you said the Faccioli family, I couldn't help but think about the fact that you guys have never taken. We've had a lot of basement sessions, but you've never taken me to Italy for a design session.
That is
and
true.
I'm a little bit bothered by it.
Yeah,
Any excuse I can go to Italy is what I need to work on.
We've got a compliance binder that keeps us from
does.
taking you there.
No shit.
But we'll piggyback next time you go over there on someone else's dime. We'll bring you
Right.
over.
Fair. No, I think that's right.
Know that we've talked about it, and the good
compliance is a real deal. I'm not saying blow by it, but it is a real deal.
This is a good time to bring this up. We've been successful in the United States, OsteoRemedies, right? But we're not just OsteoRemedies. We're Dimitra now. We're global. We're worldwide, and we're taking these products that we've developed. You've spearheaded the development of in this basement. That has led to be market share leader in the United States, and we're now we're putting plans together I'm running a project with our whole global team right now to take all of our OsteoRemedies products and launch them globally.
Right.
That's fabulous.
So there's going to be opportunities for the work that
Yeah.
has been done in this basement with our Fab Four, as I call it, the best KOL team in the business.
I appreciate that.
And
Being one of them, I appreciate that.
and take these out to all the other markets out there that that need these products. So
Let's pivot back here to spacers, and it's kind of been your core business. You are an infection management company now, and it's great. You mentioned the Fab Four, if you will, James Brown, Brian Springer, and Matt Abdel, of course, good friends of mine, and that's another thing. It's like you guys. It's great for those. They're my three closest friends in orthopedics, and it's great to be able to work with them in this capacity. It's been a blast. But let's talk about spacers, and let's talk about what the threats are to spacers.
Sure.
Right now, the biggest thing coming, and it was just out in JBJS a couple of weeks ago, is Tom Ferring's, everybody's been talking about his 1 versus 2 stage, and it appears, at least in that one data set, that 1 stage is comparable to 2 stage. So tell us about how a spacer company is looking at this keen interest on single stage, because it would threaten the entire business. I mean, I am certainly, and I have my conflicts and bias. I disclose those all the time, but I still, I wouldn't work with you if I didn't think it was the right thing to do anyway. I believe in many. In fact, I believe in many patients need spacers. Maybe some need a 1 stage. That's fine. How are you going to navigate the 1 stage? Talk to us about that, because it's coming fast and furious. There's no, it's like other things in orthopedics. Some trends are not unstoppable. I think this is unstoppable relatively.
Yeah.
Tell us about navigating that.
For me, I tell you what, we started as a spacer company. I'm proud that we're an infection management company now. Mm-hmm. And if I were to defend the spacer only, I think I'd be doing my company and patients a disservice.
I think that's right.
If the market moves away from spacers and moves into other things, the bad news is there's still going to be patients that get infections. So the good news for our business, when we look at, is it a threat? It might be a threat to one of our products, but we're not a spacer company. We're an infection management company. So if everything switched from 2 stage to 1 stage, OsteoRemedies would still be there for the patients, the surgeons, and the distributors today. And that's why we got beads, and that's why we got the wash products. That's why we have the debridement instrumentation
the
that
brush
you
and all
and the
the
Fab
things.
Four helped us design. And it doesn't really matter to us what is used in the surgery as long as the patient gets right care. We're going to continue to provide simple solutions to complex disorders for infections of total joints. Yeah. That's what we do. It's not just spacers.
It's almost like it's like a mission statement right
That's
there.
our
right?
vision.
It is, right?
That's our vision on the wall in our office, and we think about it every day. We say no to products because it doesn't fit our vision. We could probably have other revenue products,
sure.
but it doesn't fit who we are, and then it changes our distribution channel.
Do you think that the market sees you as just a spacer company, or you think you've been successful in transitioning to an infection management company?
I think it's evolving right now. I do.
You think we're in the middle of it?
Yeah,
right now?
we are. And keep
in terms
mind,
of what the market sees you as.
Well, and
right?
the market's perception in some ways is, what do they see in the
of
meeting?
course.
What do you see in the ad? But it's also with the, Chris talked about the sales managers that we have now. We've got so many more people in the field that are going and spreading the word.
And that's been
face
new.
to
That's
face.
been the last
a year-ish
Coming
ago
up
we
on
added
2
our
years?
first, a year and a half, I guess.
So it's 18 months.
So you're not really.
19
I
for the
mean, it
first.
takes a good year to see the effect of
yes.
that, right?
And for a long time, it was.
Can you tell my board that?
Well,
It's
if they tuned into the podcast, they're going to hear it. But
I always say it's not a Harvard business case. You can't just
orthopedics.
You can't just add marketing and grow sales like you do in the Harvard business case model in your MBA. I mean, it takes time for these things to mature.
Well, especially with sales cycles.
And we're seeing
et
it
cetera,
now.
yeah.
We're starting to see it.
It was a couple at the beginning. Now we're up to a much larger. We had 10 people in the field. We got a great person leading sales. We've got 3 PhDs that go support the efforts in the field.
That is so different.
Yeah.
That is so different than where you started, even as recent as 2 or 3 years ago.
For sure.
Yeah. That is so different. So you've really made the pivot, which is, I think, also a good sign of an entrepreneurial growth company, is you'll pivot with the market, which it seems like you're doing.
But even if beyond the products and the people we put out there, at the end of the day, you take single stage like you talked about before. If the data proves out And I'm not talking about in specialized centers that, present their data, but if it worked for the masses, like Chris said, not only do we have a product portfolio that can manage and adapt to that, but we've also got a larger group of, if you look at our overall group, we're not just, US only. We're not just spacer
That's
only.
right.
We've got a lot of things going at it. And we want what's going to work for the patients at the end of the day. I don't mean that in some altruistic way, but at the end of the day, like, why are we doing this if we're not doing it for the right reasons? I just personally, my own bias, I don't believe the data has proven out. And there's a lot of things going on between single stage and the 1.5 destination, all that other stuff. And I think the gold standard's still 2-stage, and I think we have an unbelievable portfolio.
We got to let look, I would say stay the course. My advice, and I give it to you all the time. There's going to be a lot of 1 stages. It's been everything, even in the last just 12 months, from a 5-hour case, the way Faring described it, just got reported at JBJS, to at the latest meeting I debated it at the podium. They're like, I do it in 2 hours. Well, one, the data says is equal at 5 hours, and the other one says, now I do it at 2 hours, which means you're taking shortcuts. So I would say hold tight. It reminds me of the dive bombers. I watched this movie not that long ago where in the World War II, the dive bombers would have to, when they were getting ready to drop a bomb on the boat, right? They would have to hold, and bullets are flying around them, and they had to hold tight until the end, and then they would release, and they would, go, I can't remember what movie that was.
They didn't have smart bombs back then.
Right? So I think a lot of what we're doing in healthcare right now, it's crazy, is sometimes you just have to hold, because there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of chaos right now. A lot of people looking for shortcuts. A lot of people giving input who aren't still doing surgery.
Yeah.
Like they're not. Some of the people giving input up there, I'm like, when's the last time you've had a scalpel? Like you haven't done or help. Like, I mean, I know I can't necessarily call it out all the time. I'm not going to name names. They know who they are. But like, get off the podium. It's not your like the day I stop holding a scalpel, you're going to find me here yelling at my kids. They'll be like, they're like 23. I'll still be out yell at the grandkids or whatever. But I'm not going to be hanging out at the podium. Right. So, and I think that's the, you just hold tight. There's going to be a role for spacers, I think, foreseeable future. And we got to see some of these things. Some single stages fail. Yeah. And when they have revision implants in, it's catastrophic.
That's right.
The next thing you might have to look at is like tumor spacers because these are going to be a mess when they fail, right? Because they're going to go right to putting revision implants.
And you talk about patients that need the kitchen sink, so to speak.
That's right.
We're blessed to be in Memphis. We work with surgeons at St. Jude, and they treat some of these kids that have cancer. They treat them with our spacers, our bone cement, our products, our beads, our wash. And you don't cut corners when you have a child with cancer.
No doubt.
And I wish that we didn't cut corners with the little old lady who has a bad knee either. It's disappointing at times when you think about the fact that some people they get their care chosen based on economics.
Yeah.
And when it's your mom, when it's your grandma, when it's your aunt, your brother that's getting surgery, what do? You find him the best surgeon you know. You don't tell all your other surgeon friends that you pick someone else.
That's you.
And you find the best.
I've watched that in your industry.
You find the best product for that family member. Sometimes it's not your own; it's a competitor, and you just want the best for. And we should think that way about every patient. That's one of the things that Eric and I, from the very beginning, we talked about in 2014 when we first started talking together about this business. Is patients are first. Absolutely first. We've got to do things that help these patients stay alive, avoid amputations, and get back to playing golf, playing tennis, hanging with their grandchildren, whatever they want to do.
I got a guy right now, just had to redo his spacer.
Yeah.
He was a Vietnam vet, got hit with shrapnel when he was part of a chopper that went down. Hit with shrapnel. He had a draining sinus for 50 years in his tibia, and then his knee got arthritic. Super nice guy, otherwise healthy. So I did a spacer. Tried to keep him more ambulatory with a poly and PMMA femur. But he had pseudomonas in his proximal tibial bone, right? Yeah. Sometimes that takes more than one washout.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, these are tried and true principles of infection we all know, and so he couldn't clear it all, and we had to do a rotational gastroc flap, and that got infected. So me and the tumor surgeon have been working with him together. He did the flap, and I just took him back this week and decided I'm going back to old school cement on cement. And I told him it's going to be a little creaky, but when you walk, We know it's going to loot out some antibiotics, but just know that that's it. And we got to give it everything we can. We hit him with higher dose antibiotic. The flap looks great. He's gonna save. And he's like, I appreciate you. He said, God bless you for trying to save my leg.
Yeah.
And that goes right back to the premise of what we're doing here. Now I want to leave on talking a couple things. Number one, the future.
Yeah.
5 years from now.
Sure.
5 years from now. Eric, where is OsteoRemedies 5 years from now in your viewpoint?
I think a big part of it is they're no longer, the products and the patients that we serve and the surgeons that we work with. We're way beyond just the U.S., which is exciting.
Bigger outside
we
US
talk
market,
about those
that's
other
great.
markets.
Yeah.
One of the things that the other markets don't have access to is they don't always have access to the same modalities and technologies and things that we have in the States. And that's a shame, right? When we talk about patient care. So
Totally agree.
I think outside the U.S., it's a whole different picture. Thankfully, working, with at a group level with Demetra and all, we've got, channels that we can, as a group, go out to in a whole different way than we have to this point. So to me, that's exciting. I think hopefully we've figured out ways that we're treating a lot less infection and we're preventing a lot more infection. I feel really good about the products that we have today, but as you know, we've got things in the pipeline that we think are gonna, hopefully prevent at another level. So I hope we're sitting here going, infection rates are down because we've helped to put some of those products through the great surgeons and the distributors that help and promote our products. I hope we're preventing a lot more 5 years from now than we are today.
Yep.
Those are probably two things. And beyond that, I would say from the same things that we've wanted for the culture, I hope the people that we have in this business are, they meet all the objectives that they want. They feel fulfilled. They are able to grow their career and their experience, and they're better people for it. Like if we could do those three things, I'd feel really good about the outcome of this story.
Something you mentioned I want to touch on, I forgot to talk about this because I had it in my mind to talk about it, was the pipeline. One of the things we've talked about, and I learned this from Brady Shirley, who, as you know, I have a great relationship with, and who was president and COO and even CEO of Don Joy and Innovus. He always talked about the cadence of innovation of a growth company. And when the cadence of innovation stops, the market begins to look for your innovation. And if you stumble on that cadence and there's a gap, the market may respond by looking away a little bit. Have we seen that in OsteoRemedies at times in the experience? Because we did have some gaps.
Yeah.
We had some struggles.
That's fair.
Do you think that has happened?
Yeah, and we look at it all the time because, my favorite chart is our sales chart from 2014 to today because it goes in the right direction. Every year we've grown. And above the growth lines, we've always put pictures of the products we launched each year.
Yeah, and there was some...
And then we went 3 years with zeros.
And that's when I was getting edgy. He knows that. I was always like.
I remember.
And I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to blame anybody, but we talked a little bit. We talked a little bit about the FDA, and I'm not going to blame the FDA.
No, that was a big punch in the gut. That's no doubt.
But the disappointing thing for me when I look at that slide and I see that those blanks above those 3 years, 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah.
When I look at those 3 years where we didn't truly launch anything new. It was not because we weren't thinking about it. We weren't innovating. But we went a period, the first 4 or 5 510Ks, they all got cleared. And then we hit a wall.
Yeah.
We even got we got our GV hip cleared, but they said no to the knee.
You were trying to innovate, but there were
So we couldn't do the shoulder.
Yeah.
And then we started working on a foot and ankle. And then we started working. And so the goalposts changed a little bit. And then that's not unfair to say. So, and again, I'm not blaming anyone. Because we didn't get these products cleared and we didn't get these things new to the market. What it taught us, though, is that you can't grow your business solely organically. But at the time, we didn't have any money to grow it inorganically. So at that same time when Astorg and Demetra came and took over the ownership of our business, all of a sudden we had resources. Yeah. And so that's where if you look back,
the innovation picked
we
back
organically
up again.
grew well.
That's right.
And we went
that's
from 0 to 60.
That's the benefit of equity coming in. That's the benefit of a corporate capitalization, right? You can do it.
No doubt about it.
I think that's fair.
And so now we look back and our innovations aren't just what we can design in the basement and have our engineering
I think it's really,
get through the FDA. It's what we can acquire.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah.
So quickly, your 5-year outlook. Where do you see OsteoRemedies in 5 years? Similar?
My answer is always the same in this question. I have two ideas. I have a strategic plan, and then I have a playbook. A A strategic plan is, in the perfect world, here's what we're going to do the next 5 years. The playbook is all the contingencies when the bullets start firing. You learn in the Army, you learn in business that everything, and Mike Tyson said it best, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And if you don't have contingency plans for upside and downside, you're hosed.
That's the playbook.
And so that's the playbook. That's what the NFL head coach has. There isn't a play for 3rd and 81, right? But there's a play for 3rd and 30.
Yep.
And it's in the playbook somewhere. So there's something in there. So we think about, Eric and I and our board, and okay, we want to do this product, we want to buy this product, we want to develop this product, we want to hire these people. But I'll tell you in 2 years what our 5-year plan from today is.
Yeah.
Because if you plan 5 years out, it's smart.
Especially in healthcare.
But it's not going to happen. Because a lot's going to happen in years 2, 3, and 4 that are going to change that 5th year for you. Healthcare
is so chaotic right now. You got your playbook probably overshadows your strategic plan all day and every day.
Playbook rules the day.
No doubt about that. Yep. That's really insightful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
So, Chris, Eric, I just want to thank you guys. This has been an amazing time.
Yeah.
Reminiscing about some of the awesome times we've had together, but also getting your perspective on OsteoRemedies as a company.
It's fun.
Infection, the space, and appreciate you being honest and transparent. We've said a few things that might need to be edited out, but that's fine. The team will take care of that.
That's all right.
But cheers and salute to you being here. Thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you.
Time here with us
I
tonight.
have to go out of my way to thank you because, when Eric and I started this thing, we said, hey, we can't, even with the best engineers in the world, you can't be successful in this market without surgeon input.
No doubt.
Because engineers design everything perfect, but sometimes they don't have the experience to understand the anatomy. They don't have the experience to understand what it's really like to do a total knee in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. And we have always, Eric and I have always said, we can't innovate without surgeons. And so we've been fortunate to find you early on. We had a distributor of ours that introduced us, and we're grateful for that. And then you brought in the Stableford, and I call it the Fab Four, you and Dr. Brown and Dr. Springer and Dr. Abdel. And I'm telling you that sometimes as the small company guy, when I go to the academy, a lot of the big company guys that know me, they're like, how'd you get those 4 guys to work with you? You guys are like a little company. And I'm like, yeah, we're a little company. Forget about us. And I walk away.
I like that fun. So, that's why.
Proud of that. So I want to say kudos to you. And
it's been my honor.
You've helped us
a lot of fun.
Get where we are.
Well said.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, I want to thank the audience again. This is Dr. Michael Minighini, Unhinged, on the podcast. I want to appreciate everyone tuning in for the hard conversations. We're going to continue to ask tough questions, challenge our guests on issues that are important to patients, providers, and all the stakeholders in healthcare where the ground is shaking. So thanks again for tuning in.